What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shaped their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. In my 30 years as an author and storyteller, many people have asked, what is the favorite story you've ever had the opportunity to tell? Without question, it is the story of Kyle Carpenter. On November 21st, 2010, Carpenter, a U.S. Marine Lance Corporal, was posted on a rooftop in Afghanistan when a Taliban grenade landed between him and a fellow Marine. Without hesitation, Carpenter jumped on the grenade, saving his best friend, but sacrificing himself. After flatlining 3 times, undergoing 41 surgeries and spending 3 years at Walter Reed Medical Center, Kyle Carpenter ran the Marine Corps Marathon. In 2014, he became the youngest living recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor, our nation's highest military decoration. I had the unbelievable honor of sharing his story in his book, You Are Worth It. That title is the response he gives when someone thanks him for his service. Corporate Competitor Podcast Month celebrating military leaders would not be complete without Kyle's power of perspective. Kyle came to my home studio to record interviews for the book's launch. Listen in to our conversation. Kyle, thank you so much. I have to start with one of the most intriguing things about you the first day I heard your name and I was told a little about you was I went on Instagram, looked you up, and there you were with that handle, Chicks Dig Scars. I gotta ask, where does that come from?
Way back in the day, during a time where I didn't really know what social media was, people had told me about this new thing called Instagram and Twitter. And honestly, I just kind of made it and clearly was not taking it too serious at the time. As I went along, posting about my adventures and my journey well before the medal and throughout the hospital, I came to enjoy it. But as surprising as this is, my mother is actually the pioneer of social media in our family. Operation Kyle, my public Facebook page, started out as a mass update system.
That's right.
All these people, after I got injured, were wanting to know what happened, if I was still hanging on. It's kind of evolved and transitioned from there. But let's just say Chicks Dig Scars was created before I knew the Medal of Honor was coming. But, people love it. And I'm so thankful that I just went with it because now it's
got a brand of its own.
Yeah, it's got a brand of its own. And it's been great.
And I do know when you were in consideration for the medal, one of the questions you had for the people at the Pentagon and the White House was, what do you want me to do here? Tell me about that conversation.
So during the investigation and then the lead up to the medal, they kind of analyze every aspect of my life, everything from what am I doing down to social media. So it got brought up when the medal seemed more hopeful than we had been expecting over the years of investigation. We really started to try and get prepared. And they brought up the Chicks Dig Scars Instagram and Twitter handle. And their points were very valid. This is an incredible honor. The eyes of the nation and the world are going to be upon you. People might either be concerned or a little disappointed or think a little adversely towards the fact that someone with the Medal of Honor isn't that serious or doesn't hold himself to a standard that fits the Medal of Honor. I took a long, hard time to think about it, and I asked some really great Marines that I knew their opinions and really tried to get a full picture of how I wanted to handle this going forward. And it got to a point where I just thought, this is I think, funny, but it's just a real part of my life. I thought it was a very minor thing to think about, looking at someone's handle and kind of judging who that person is, unless it's really bad, of course. And then I thought, if I'm going to change myself or my social media handle or what I'm projecting or what I'm about for a few people that might look at it good or bad, how's that going to dictate and what is that going to lead into in the future with bigger decisions and how I think about things and how I'm influenced by other people? So clearly I kept it, and I'm glad I did. It's been a positive thing that's been really well received. So I'm thankful I stuck to my gut.
You have to embrace it.
Yes.
Set the scene for me, if you will, of the phone call to your home from the President of the United States, alerting you and your family to the fact that you will be a recipient of the Medal of Honor.
The phone call. Well, it was a very surreal experience, especially to have left a college class to go take the call from the president.
Isn't that great? Like, you got to leave college to go home to get a
Man, I got to do this homework, but got to talk to the president first. But it's funny because just like the two different outlooks for my brother and my parents on the military, of course, myself and my parents knew the call was coming the day, the exact minute. So we checked my brothers out of school, told them it was a surprise, and I wanted everyone to be there in the living room with me during this special moment. I can't remember which said which because my brothers are twins, but one thought that Dad was getting a new recliner, and the other one thought that we were getting a new dog.
Puppy. Yeah.
Clearly, they were off the mark.
But that's what they thought was important at the moment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Worth pulling him from school.
And I would have loved a new dog too. I would have. But, we're sitting there in the living room and I get a call from the president, and it was amazing. In that crazy, surreal moment of talking to not only my commander-in-chief, but the leader of our nation and an extremely influential leader across the world, I was also equally as thankful that it was happening for my family. None of us expected it. It had been years since I got injured and since I knew that they had started a potential Medal of Honor investigation. So obviously it wasn't planned, but when it happened, even though I could never repay my family or my parents for what they went through with me and all of the things they did for me, all of the love they gave me and the support through my journey, I'll never be able to repay them. But I'm thankful that that happened to kind of pat them on the back and say, hey, I'm here. I did as well as I did. The action that I did to get injured and to receive this medal was because of how you influenced my life and how you shaped me to be who I am. I was so thankful that they got to share that moment with me.
And in all of that, and I know you don't wear it often, but do you feel all of that when you put that medal on to participate in an event?
Absolutely. I mean, the medal, it feels like it weighs 1,000,000 pounds. It's just so many of these massive, powerful, historical people and ideas and sacrifice and all of these things that aren't even tangible, which make people and humans and Americans and our country so great. All of that is represented in those couple of ounces.
Yeah.
Not only those that have served to sacrifice and give up their life for their country, but then you have those that are missing in action, that no one will ever know how they gave their last measure of devotion. You can't even tell your family what happened. We don't know if they did anything, which they probably did. We don't know if they did anything heroic right before they died. They are solidified in the history books, but their last few seconds and moments are gone with the winds of history. Prisoners of war. Imagine being in a 4-foot by 4-foot cell for 5 years. Every day you're getting fed food that is purposefully bacteria ridden. So you're not only sick on the inside, but they're torturing you and doing all of these terrible things on the outside. It just represents so much more than any one person or one idea or one story.
You know, on your social media, you share positivity in ways that are really, really impactful. Where does that come from? And what is it that you're trying to inspire in the words you share that make positivity so important to you?
I can't sit here and say that I'm this perfectly optimistic and positive person all the time. With everything in life, something happens, a little bit of time turns into a lesson, and then with some more time, it turns into perspective. When I woke up in the hospital after almost 5 weeks of being unconscious, my last memory I had was physically how I felt bleeding out. And with the few seconds I had left, thinking about my family, how devastated my mom was going to be that I didn't wake up. And then coming to terms with, I'm never going to wake up again. At a fresh 21 years old, just having my birthday a month before, I truly thought my time on this earth was up. As the blood flowed and the tiredness to my core set in, I, in the most surreal way, made peace with everything. And I closed my eyes for what I thought was going to be the last time on this earth. When I woke up 5 weeks later, how do you not be positive, optimistic, and hopeful after that? Mm. Everything from the pain I went through in the beginning of the hospital to throwing out the first pitch for the Padres to going on Letterman and sitting here with all of you in Florida, looking out over the water and all the trees. I never would have had any of these experiences. Running the marathon, I would have never felt what it was like to push myself that hard to cross the line of a marathon. Take one of my worst things that has come from getting injured. People say, oh, well, you lost your eye. You only have half the vision for the rest of your life. Your good eye isn't as perfect as it used to be. Yes, all those things are true, but that grenade ripped through not only my body, but my body armor. My body was smoking hot off the grill when they found me. It blew my protective eyewear off. It ruptured both my eardrums. It put shrapnel into my brain. And as delicate and fragile as eyes are, I still came away from that with essentially a perfectly good eye. I can still see things. I can still drive. I can still see colors and sunlight and flowers and all these things that I could have easily not had any vision the rest of my life. Everything is like this beautiful bonus round. Yes, I have hard nights. Yes, I have hard days. Yes, I have dark moments. But the glass is either half full or half empty. It depends on how you choose to look at it.
I love that phrase, bonus round. That is just so powerful. The idea that if you want to look at it, you want to take the right perspective, to use your word, and you see those moments as bonus rounds instead of why did this happen to me moments, the world changes for you.
Mm-hmm. It's a choice of how you look at it and the positives and the silver linings that you see in and through situations. Now, I just hope I can share that with other people and help other people see those silver linings and those beautiful but tough lessons of perspective in their own lives.
And years later, that experience would play its role as you were at Walter Reed and you're having to take perspective into account. You could have cursed the world, cursed your maker, could have cursed anybody and said, rightfully so, why did this have to happen to me? Instead, you said, lucky I am that I get a second chance. Mm-hmm. Perspective seems to play its role for you.
Yeah, perspective has shaped my life and given me the trajectory that I'm on.
I love it. Thinking of situations, and one that was one of the most fun to write about with you was the decision when you chose to join the Marines and the difference in the household between your two younger brothers and your parents and the way they received the news that Kyle was going to be a Marine. Tell me about that.
Well, that is one way to describe it. Different reactions for sure. When joining the military came up in my family and I presented my side of how I was thinking about the potential situation I was going into. At the time, our nation, our military was in a time of two conflicts in two different parts of the world in two different countries, both very dangerous, especially going into a job field infantry that there was a very good chance I was not only going to be put in harm's way, but could be thought of or seen as the tip of the spear, the first ones into harm's way, the first ones that could potentially get injured or killed. My brothers are 6 years younger than me, they thought it was amazing, kind of like a superhero move, as did I. I was so excited and completely eyes wide open for the opportunity, and my brothers were as well. My parents, knowing that danger, knowing what I could potentially be going into and what could happen, they were on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And I think everyone was looking at it in their own way, good or bad, scared or not. But I think everyone was right. We all had different perspectives on the situation, but no one was wrong. I just think myself and my brothers were naive kids, like we all are at some point, that are excited for bigger and better things, and not only a challenge, but a little bit of risk makes it exciting, and just all of these things. And being parents with time and wisdom, bringing us into the world and caring for us and wanting to raise us, and obviously not want us in harm's way, they had their rightful position of being worried and concerned. But even as hard as it was on them, and as sad and terrified as my mom was in the beginning, as well as my dad, they've been my biggest supporters and my biggest fans. So two different perspectives on the idea of potentially going in the military, but I'm so thankful that I'm still here to tell my parents, hey, I'm even more happy with my decision than I was when it happened. And I'm thankful for how our journey played out, because now myself, along with you as my parents, and this journey we've experienced together can help people. So I'm sorry for the torture, mom and dad, but I'm thankful we're doing good now.
So one of the great challenges in any Marine's early journey, obviously, is boot camp. You show up and they are doing their very best to game shift you, right?
No, they just put your arm around you. Just love
pat you on the
a
back,
little
love on you a little bit. Well, tell me about some of that love. Tell me about going to boot camp and what you expected, what it was like.
So going into the military and everything that followed, whether it was boot camp, Afghanistan, I tried to just kind of go with the flow. I knew that whatever I was about to get into, I could sit there and think all day long, and I would not make any progress in being able to anticipate or know what's coming. You can Google what's it like going to boot camp, what are drill instructors like. You can Google all these things, but it's definitely one of those experiences that you just don't know until you know. So I didn't think too much about it. All I knew was that I wasn't going to quit, and I was going to become the best Marine that I could. The big wake-up call was drive through the gate at Parris Island, and you feel the van come to a stop, and the door on this van, I still do not know to this day how that door did not come off of the van. That terrifying and massive of a human being drill instructor ripped the door to that van open with so much force and immediately started screaming unlike I ever heard anyone scream in my entire life. Like, football coaches, warm up to this guy. We listen, of course, and you get off the bus, and it's a mix of, wow, this is really happening. Wait, is this really happening? Okay, what have I done? The door gets jerked open. They scream at you to get off. You run off the van, and there's all these yellow footprints, the famous yellow footprints, right in front of the receiving building. And they are all painted perfectly in line with each other. And even though you haven't had your hair cut yet, you're still a nasty civilian, is what they call it. You haven't learned any military customs or regulations. You might not even know much about the Marine Corps. But when you stand on those yellow footprints, you are forced for the first time in your life to get into a structured military formation. From there, you enter the gates. You do your week of processing and you get your uniforms and all of that, which don't have name tapes. You don't have a last name. You're only referred to as a recruit for 12 weeks until the last week after you earn the title Marine. You can only talk in third person. So from mentally and emotionally to cutting your hair, they completely wear you down. They break you down and break you down to a point where they can start rebuilding you mentally, physically, and emotionally as a United States Marine. And they do a very good job of it. That was one of the most surreal moments of my life.
You know, there has been media, New York Times did a big magazine story about it, just questioning whether that's really required still to shape the kind of person that will go to battle, go to fight with each other. Give me your take on the importance of that kind of breakdown / rebuild that has to occur over those weeks.
If you are not pushed beyond the limits that you know, if you're not given experiences, just like with anything in the world, to not only expand your thinking, your physical limitations, when the country calls upon you and they want you to be that aggressive Marine, to take care of and get rid of the bad guys that, treat people so terribly around the world, that truly just wake up every morning and all they want is a little bit of hope, safety for themselves and their family, fresh, clean drinking water. You can't take away the things and the tools that create something that you want the end result of. Football. Give a team a football coach that doesn't yell, that is, more nice and understanding and all of these things. I would say he's probably going to be a football coach for about a year, that one season. You have to somewhat have a blank slate, whether it's something you're going into mentally in life or in the Marine Corps. You have to work with something enough to where your influence is effective enough to complete the mission down the road.
And I love the way you put it earlier. You have to be pushed outside of your zone or what you believe you're capable of to be one day ready when you're asked to be capable.
Yeah. If I wouldn't have got pushed as hard as I was, if I wouldn't have trained for the year and a half that I did before going to Afghanistan, if I wouldn't have been screamed at like I was, if those Medal of Honor recipients that I learned about in boot camp hadn't have been as pushed as hard as they were to do what they did, which led to inspire me to become the best Marine I was. If all of those things wouldn't have happened, would I have recovered as well as I did? Would I have been as mentally tenacious as I was? Would I have been able to say, okay, this pain is really terrible, but that pain on that 15-mile hike when I had no skin left on my feet and those 100 pounds on my back and it was raining and 4:30 a.m. and oh yeah, it was 27 degrees outside. If I wouldn't have been mentally and physically hardened like that, would I be in the position I am right now today, helping to inspire and do good things in the world?
Great question. One of my favorite parts of writing this book was getting to know your mother, Robin, one of the most extraordinary women on the planet, right? You're nodding your head because you have to. No, I'm just joking. She'd slap you in the back of the head if she was sitting here.
I have to, but I want to. You're
but
right.
You want to.
She is.
Unbelievable.
Words do not describe.
And while working on the book, one day she found a question you answered in a school assignment in the year 2000. And I'd love for you to read it and then talk to me a little bit about it.
Oh, wow. October 19th, 2000. What is success? To laugh often and much, to appreciate beauty, to win people's respect, to leave the world a bit better, to always find the best in others.
What a powerful.
That's crazy. I cannot believe I wrote that.
Yeah. The reason I loved that note, and you even taking a chance now to read it and kind of reminisce a little, is that yes, boot camp, Parris Island, the instructors there played an enormous role in what you would become. But what would be required of you later in life was there foundationally even as a child. How incredible is that to have grown up in a house that teaches you that that's what success is?
Yeah.
I love it. I know that when you went to Germany, there's that significant stop, the hospital at Landstuhl, that is so important to your stabilization, getting to Walter Reed. And you had the chance to go back, walk the halls that you were once rolled down on a gurney, and actually say thank you to doctors who were committed today to serving others. Tell me about that trip and about the emotions there.
Going back to Landstuhl, to the military hospital in Germany, my mom is beside me. I'm walking down this hall where I was getting rolled down with who knows how many machines hooked up to me, where there was an extreme urgency to keep this critically, barely hanging on patient alive. To not only walk down that hall, but to enter the exact same ICU room and see the same ICU bed. It was perfectly made, covered in all of these medical supplies that they would need if they rolled someone in there right at that moment. The bed that they resuscitated me on, that they wheeled me in and out of for surgery. The bed where people physically put their hands on me and helped keep me alive. That was the physical place where I laid in the ICU bed, bled, and struggled for air and for life. And I was so thankful that I got to experience where I came from, where I didn't know if I was going to make it from, where I wasn't even conscious to think about any of that, to go back somewhere that you were when life was so fragile. 8 years later, to see these supplies laid out neatly on the bed, to see the people that did that and know that all these amazing and wonderful and hardworking, beautiful, just loving and giving of themselves people were still just as ready to accept that next casualty and to help save that next casualty as they were me almost 10 years earlier.
And to be able to look them in the eye and say thank you
Absolutely.
had to be enormously impactful, both for you and for them.
Absolutely. Honestly, it was so amazing and impactful for me, but I think much more so for them. The military medical community, as amazing and incredible as it is, they have a very hard time. Like we mentioned in the book, it's kind of like the beginning scene of the worst war movie, but over and over and over again. And you work so hard, you get so much blood on your hands to keep these catastrophically injured service members alive. And you see them for, at the most, 48, 36 hours. And then you send them out. And you very rarely, if ever, hear how they're doing, if they survived, if they were able to keep their leg, if they got married and continued on with a happy life. You never get to see the fruits of your labor. So to go back and to be able to tell them thank you, so many tears and eyes around the room, to see them impacted by you standing in front of them and saying, listen, I can be here today. I can put my arm around my mom, tell her I love her. I'm here because of what you did, and I'm thankful, and I'm enjoying truly living a life that you've given me. And that was just incredible.
And for them, it was kind of a feel it moment, right? They got to feel who they served, and they got to remember and know that what they did mattered.
Absolutely.
What encouragement would you offer someone who's going through rehab in the hospital, someone who's facing a long road ahead?
The first piece of advice I would give someone either struggling or laid in a hospital bed right now, I'm going to start with the tough one first. What happened, happened. And you can't change it. Whatever your struggle is, whatever has happened, whatever has knocked you down, whatever is keeping you down, it's in the past. You cannot change it. You can only move forward. It's kind of the most simple scenario, but it's the easiest one to get stuck in.
It's actually the hardest one to do, right? To stop living your past.
Absolutely. And it's okay if you're in that position, but you just have to start thinking, that next little step at a time. And you just have to realize that the cards have fallen, the chips have fallen, how they're going to, and that you have to deal with it. Now, you can take the time to process it, to emotionally, figure out how you can and want to deal with it. So there's that piece. Ending on the best note, the smallest of steps eventually completes the grandest of journeys. I say that not because I think it sounds like a good piece of advice. I'm telling you because I learned through the trial by fire. In the beginning, I woke up, hooked on a ventilator. I had lost my right eye. My eardrums were blown out. I had staples from my ear to my throat to repair the hole in the carotid artery in my neck. I had a collapsed lung, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep either one of my arms. In that state, I had a seemingly unrealistic goal of running a marathon because I could only imagine, if I could cross that line of a marathon, that would prove to me, just me, I didn't care what anyone else saw, that I was back and I was still me. But in the state, physically, mentally, and emotionally that I was in, I couldn't even sit up in bed. So I started to sit up in the hospital bed. Okay, if I can sit up, I can spin over, and I want to hang my feet off the edge of my hospital bed. If I can hang my feet off the edge of the bed, I can work on eventually standing up. If I can stand up, I can take a step. If I can take a step, I can walk. If I can walk, I can eventually run. And if I can get to where I can run, to whatever capacity that is, one day I might actually be able to complete that marathon. When I crossed the line of the marathon for the first time, with tears in my eyes, I thought about not only all of those amazing people that helped me get to this point, but everything that I had been through, all of the pain, all of the great moments. I thought about all of those I recovered with and what we had been through. And I crossed that line, and I didn't think I did it. I thought we did it. In knowing that, I proved to myself what I had thought those many years before. And I was just so happy and proud of myself that I had done something most people can't say they've done. And also, I had done something that I never did before I was injured.
Right. The pre-you hadn't done that.
So not only was I back, but I was actually better and stronger than I was before that fateful day that changed everything. So I tell you that the smallest of steps completes the grandest of journeys, because in the beginning I was forced to take those small steps. I didn't have any other option. And whoever's listening to this, you might not have any other option either.
You know, in working on your story, there were not a lot of times that I heard you talk about, well, you might have felt sorry for yourself at different stages. You certainly didn't let the world see it. But there was one time, and it was really impactful to me, when you shared the story of having the opportunity to be at home for the first time after Walter Reed allowed you to go home for a bit, and sitting there at a counter trying to eat cereal. Would you share that story with me here?
Absolutely. There comes a point in everyone's recovery, whether that is a physical recovery, a mental recovery, or an emotional recovery, that I guess it could be seen or thought about as a breaking point. My breaking point came in the spring of 2011 that followed my injury in late 2010. I had just got to a point where I could go home, or I could leave the hospital and somewhat start to try to grasp what my new normal life was. It was getting near my bedtime at 10 o'clock at night. I had had a whole day at therapy. I was mentally and physically exhausted. I opened the counter. I got the box of cereal out on my own with two hands. It felt like a 50-pound dumbbell, but I got the gallon of milk out of the refrigerator, got my spoon, I got all set up, and I'm sitting there and I make my bowl of cereal. At the time, I had no lower teeth. My lower lip had been essentially fused and grown to where my teeth should have and used to have been, because of the damage to my face and therefore the nerve damage. I still can't feel my lower lip, but at the time, I'm sure it was worse before any of that nerve regeneration happened. I was eating the cereal and milk was dribbling all off my chin. And I'm sitting there, and a few months before, I was in the best shape of my life. I was 155 pounds, toting a machine gun with 800 rounds in my pack every single day through Afghanistan with 80 pounds of gear on, and nothing besides a grenade could stop me, right? And now I was struggling with every ounce of my being to eat a bowl of cereal. In that moment, I had that breaking point, and I just started crying. For the first time, I was not strong, not only for myself, but for those around me. And I think that played into it also. I had just been so tough up until that point that I hit this moment and I drastically and instantly hit rock bottom. As I started to hysterically cry, my mom came into the kitchen and immediately thought something had happened, thought I was in pain, asked me what was going on, very concerned. And I just said, look at me. Who's ever going to love me again? I had not lost hope up until this point. I could see that it absolutely devastated my mother. She gave me a huge hug and she promised one day everything would not only be okay, but that someone would love me again and love me so much and I would live happily ever after. That moment was maybe only 5 to 10 minutes long, but I realized that in that moment, I could either sit on that stool at that kitchen counter the rest of my life, or I could get off that stool, walk away from that kitchen counter, and put one foot in front of the other. I not only did that, and I'm so happy and proud to say that I did, but I'm also happy to say that my mom's side of things is coming true too. People still love me. I'm living my happily ever after. She's still there. I can still feel her hugging me at that kitchen counter. Like I said earlier, you just got to get up. If that takes you some time, that's okay. If it takes you a lot of time, that's okay. But you have to keep in mind in the back of your head that eventually you're going to come to a crossroads. You have to either get up and walk away from that kitchen counter, or you're going to be stuck there your entire life.
And chicks dig scars.
Yes, and chicks dig scars.
I'm excited to share with you that today, Kyle is engaged to be married to his incredible fiancée, Brittany. His mom's promise at the kitchen counter stands true. Our mindset is a choice. While we can't choose our circumstances, we can choose how we think about them. As Kyle told me, while others may look at life and ask, why me? It's healthier to look at life and say, thank God for today. I want to be more like Kyle, and I hope you do too. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir. How are
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.